This is OwlUp, where learning happens in minutes, not hours. For a deeper journey, explore all our courses at owlup.co. Now, let's dive in. Welcome back to Chapter 2 of our series, Mastering the Stock Market. In this episode titled Mental Models for Stock Selection, we're going to explore some powerful mental frameworks that can help you make smarter investment decisions. So, if you're ready to sharpen your stock selection skills, let's dive in. A tiny handful of trading days creates nearly half of the market's long-term gains. Yet most investors obsess over headlines and quarterly noise. In this episode, we dive into the quiet mental models elite stock pickers use to spot enduring winners and sidestep seductive duds. Most investors collect stock tips the way people collect apps on their phone, one for every mood, none used with any real system. The best stock pickers operate differently. They build a small, battle-tested toolkit of ways to think, then reuse those tools relentlessly. Today, we'll zoom in on how those tools actually shape buy, hold, and sell decisions in the real world. We'll connect a few powerful ideas: how knowing your lane keeps you from chasing stories you don't understand, how simple probability can stop you from overreacting to dramatic news, and how a single overlooked detail, like who really gets paid in a business, can flip a thesis upside down. By the end of this episode, you'll see why the goal isn't to predict the future perfectly, but to consistently choose better bets than the crowd. Think of today's episode as moving from naming the tools to watching how they're used under pressure. When a company misses earnings, signs a flashy partnership, or a CEO resigns suddenly, most people react first and think later. Model-driven investors reverse that order. They ask, which lenses actually matter here? And what's the simplest story that fits the facts? We'll walk through real situations where incentives, competitive position, and basic statistics quietly overrule the headlines, and why those who ignore these patterns keep relearning the same expensive lessons. Most investors focus on, what should I buy? Model-driven investors obsess over a quieter question, what am I actually seeing? That shift matters, because the raw data rarely tell you what you think they do. Start with the circle of competence in practice. Say two companies both grow revenue 20%. One sells cloud software to enterprises, the other mines lithium. If your career, reading, and curiosity have trained you to understand software but not commodities, those 20% are not equal. You're not just picking stocks, you're picking which reality you're qualified to interpret. A disciplined investor will lean into the domain where small details, like customer churn definitions or contract structures, actually mean something to them, and treat the other as background noise. Now layer in network effects. Suppose a payments platform announces a flashy new partnership. Headlines scream, massive new market, but a model-driven mind asks, does this really deepen the network, or just add vanity volume? If each new user makes the service more valuable for all existing users, growth can reinforce itself. If not, you might just be watching expensive marketing dressed up as strategy. The same press release can signal durable advantage or a costly distraction, depending on whether this model lights up in your head. Moat thinking adds another lens. Two businesses can show identical margins today, yet sit on completely different foundations. A commodity retailer with thin switching costs is one bad competitor away from trouble. A brand embedded into consumer habits, or a mission-critical tool woven into corporate workflows, can absorb shocks and still compound. You're not evaluating numbers alone, you're evaluating how hard those numbers are to attack. Incentive-caused bias then asks a more uncomfortable question: who wins if I'm wrong? When a CEO's bonus depends on adjusted EBITDA, you might see aggressive add-backs and creative restructuring. When an analyst's career rides on a bold call, their report may quietly underweight risks. This model doesn't accuse, it calibrates. It reminds you that every forecast has a human payoff structure behind it. The real edge emerges when these models fire together. A business inside your competence, with strengthening network effects, protected by a moat, and run by people whose incentives align with long-term owners, is probabilistically different from a clever story stock. The market might price both at 30 times earnings. The lattice work tells you they do not deserve the same trust. Crucially, none of this promises certainty. The point is not to eliminate being wrong, but to be wrong for better reasons, less often, and with position sizes that reflect reality rather than narrative heat. Consider two real stocks, Costco and a hot new EV startup. Both might post strong growth, yet your models push you to interrogate them differently. With Costco, you'd probe member renewal rates, supplier relationships, and how scale lowers unit costs, classic signs of a durable cost advantage. With the EV startup, you'd examine whether any charging or software ecosystem is forming real switching costs, or if it's just benefiting from hype and subsidies that can flip with one policy change. On incentives, compare a founder CEO who still owns 15% of the company to a hired gun compensated mostly in short-term stock options. The first has a personal balance sheet tied to long-term value. The second is rewarded for hitting near-term targets that may encourage financial engineering. The numbers might rhyme, the human motivations don't. Over time, these subtle distinctions are what separate a lucky trade from a thesis that compounds. Mental model investing is still in its early innings. As data streams thicken, the edge won't come from having more charts, but from structuring judgment, deciding which lens to trust, when. Think of it as building an operating system for your decisions. Future AI tools may surface models you overlook, flagging when your reasoning collapses into gut feel. Your challenge this week: before acting on any stock idea, force yourself to name at least two distinct models you're implicitly using, and one you're ignoring. As you extend this lattice work, notice how models begin to click together in unexpected places: earnings calls, macro news, even your own reactions to volatility. Over time, the question shifts from, "Is this stock cheap?" to, "Which game is this business really playing, and how often do players like this win?" That's when selection becomes deliberate, not accidental. Try this experiment. Pick two stocks from the same industry, one story stock with a hot narrative, and one boring cash-generating business, and build a one-page mental model for each using the episode's lenses: unit economics, competitive advantage, and management incentives. For the next 30 minutes, force yourself to ignore the share price and instead answer, how does this company actually make money? Why won't competitors eat their lunch? And what motivates the CEO based on their past decisions and compensation structure? Then, write down which stock you'd buy purely based on these mental models, lock that choice in, and set a calendar reminder for 3 months to see which one actually performed better. Your score isn't just performance. It's whether the reasons you picked your winner still make sense when you recheck the business later. This was OwlUp, your daily step forward. To keep learning with structured courses and more insights, go to owlup.co. Until tomorrow!